You know, the first couple of weeks of this season have really made it hit home to me how messed up last season was, right? Now, I wasn't really complaining last season because there was points during last spring and summer where I seriously thought we weren't going to have any football at all. So by the time we had some, I was okay with whatever football we got. But the first 2 weeks of this season have really reminded me how great college football is. And I know this video on Sundays is kind of a joke where we make fun of losing teams. And believe me, we're going to do that. But before I did that, I just wanted to say that, you know, what an amazing first couple of weeks of college football we've had. We've had some of everything. We've had matchups of elite teams, Georgia versus Clemson. We've had upsets, already, a bunch of them already. We've had amazing finishes. I mean, the Florida State game last night, I know it sucks for the Noles, but we've had it all. We've had great conference games already with the Big Ten starting off with almost all conference games in week 1. SEC had a conference game yesterday. Everybody else getting ready to get into conference play now or the next couple of weeks. Great non-con. I mean, we've just had it all. So a great start to the season. But unfortunately, this is the Sunday video, and that means it's time to point and laugh. There were some teams yesterday that really embarrassed themselves. A couple of teams in particular, instead of showing up to play football, they showed up like it was a picnic. They pushed a paper plate right out onto the 50-yard line, hunched down over top of it, and took a big steaming doo-doo and called it a day. Some of them managed to win, and that does matter. That does matter, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Looking bad and losing versus looking bad and finding a way to win. But I don't really know. We're going to start with Florida State here because that was the best ending of the season so far. Now, this is a humiliating loss. Florida State, and you know, you almost feel bad for Florida State because they gave Notre Dame a great game back on week 1, and people were sort of scratching their head, and myself included. I even made a video. Is Florida State way better than we thought they were, or has Notre Dame just completely fallen off the map? Well, yesterday's games gave us the answer to those questions. Notre Dame has just fallen off the map. Florida State is not any good. They lost to Jacksonville State. Now, they're an FCS team. That's all that really needs to be said. This is the first time Florida State has lost to an FCS team in the modern era. You got to go back something like 40 or 50 years when they lost to, I believe it was Southern Miss. Before we even had FBS and FCS and all that, Southern Miss was like a Division III team or something at the time. And that was like back in the 60s, I think. I mean, so this is just a humiliating home loss for Florida State. A last-second loss, which is always the worst to stomach. Trust me, I know. The Tennessee man, their biggest win in the past 22 years came against my Georgia Bulldogs on a last-second Hail Mary pass, similar to the way Florida State got beat yesterday. But to really understand exactly how bad Jacksonville State is, you have to look at their previous week's game. Well, who did they play the previous week? UAB. A team that Georgia beat 56-7 yesterday. UAB beat Jacksonville State something like 31-0 or 38-0 or 31-8. I mean, it was just a blowout. UAB blew Jacksonville State out. The very next week, Jacksonville State comes out and beats White Tonto. And UAB gets absolutely humiliated by one of the best teams in America, Georgia. Now, I don't think it's embarrassing for UAB to get blown out by UGA. A lot of teams are going to get blown out by UGA. But it is embarrassing for Florida State to lose this game. I thought Florida State had bottomed out and was on the way up. Now, the Notre Dame game getting convinced me they were quote-unquote back or really good, as evidenced by the video I made where I said, I don't know about this. Let's hold up here. We don't. Maybe Notre Dame's bad. But I did think Florida State had reached its bottom already and had nowhere to go really but up. I was wrong. This is the current low point for Florida State. This is the worst loss of all the losses Florida State has had over the last 4 or 5 years. And I want you to keep in mind, Florida State has only won 21 games total in the last 4 previous seasons. And they've still only won 21, now into the 5th season, and a loss yesterday to Jacksonville State. So, and apparently, there is still further down to go for White Tonto because this was an absolute embarrassment of a loss. Mike Norvell should be ashamed. I don't want to hear anything about injuries or the roster he inherited 2 seasons ago. He's had 2 recruiting classes. He's had 2 recruiting classes and lost to Jacksonville State. This is absolutely humiliating. So, what do we got here? Well, we might as well go ahead and grab you up here. Florida State, absolute doo-doo. We'll put you back up on the shelf, but, you know, do I need to move Florida State down to the floor? Answer me that in the comments. Now, on the floor down here, hold on. On the floor down here, I've got the group of 5 teams because I don't have the shelves put up over here yet to put them up. Should I move Florida State down to the group of 5 teams, or is it okay to leave them up here with the ACC? Let me know. For now, I'll put them up here with the ACC. But if I need to move it down to the floor, you guys let me know. Who's next on the doo-doo list? Well, how about this? How about the Shorthorn? This game wasn't even competitive. That's the troubling part if you're Texas. You know, you go on the road to Arkansas. Arkansas was fired up. They've been looking forward to this game for a long time. You go on the road and maybe a couple of fluky things happen or something like that, and they pull out a 3-point win at the end or something like that. Maybe you say, well, just one of those days, you know, they got the better of us today. They absolutely dominated Texas. I mean, they pushed you around on both lines of scrimmage. They had better skill position players. That's what's alarming to me. They had a better quarterback. That's for damn sure. Better offense, better defense. And you want to know the weird part? Or maybe it's not weird. They had better coaching. You know what Arkansas doesn't have that's better than Texas? Talent. Talent. Texas is infinitely more talented than Arkansas. And they absolutely skull drug you for 4 quarters. This game wasn't even fun to watch. After I got over the initial hilarity of Texas getting humiliated by something called Arkansas, the game was no longer even any fun to watch. I mean, that's how bad it was. That's how bad it was. I mean, you guys just look absolutely pitiful. And in the little trailer video that I made earlier, I had the thing up on the screen that said SEC Power Rankings. And I had Bama 1, Georgia 2, then everyone else, then Texas last. Obviously, a little bit of a joke there. Texas not yet in the SEC. But my God, Shorthorn man, what are you thinking wanting to get into the SEC? Let me tell you something. I have been saying, I've been talked a lot about Arkansas during the offseason. I didn't want to minimize what Arkansas did last year because for Arkansas, that was amazing. They hadn't won an SEC game in 2 years until last season. Brand new coach comes in, Sam Pittman, and he gets them not 1, not 2, but 3 SEC wins. And that was great. But they were 3-7 last year. And they're going to have, listen, and Arkansas won, so I don't want to come on here and badmouth them in a your season is over video. Arkansas is a good team, probably a little bit better than last year. Definitely a little bit better than last year. Look at their schedule, though. I mean, they're not beating Bama. They're not beating Ole Miss. They probably won't beat Auburn. Texas A&M looked terrible yesterday. Maybe, can they beat Texas A&M? They're playing Georgia. In Georgia, they're not winning those games. So you start looking at the sort of the hierarchy in the SEC and trying to figure out where is Texas going to fit in here. There ain't a whole lot of teams in the SEC that Texas is better than. That's just the truth of the matter. Vandy, Tennessee, South Carolina. That might be it. Mississippi State. That might be it. I'm not kidding. Texas is going to come into the SEC as probably the 11th, 12th, or 13th best team in the SEC. So Texas, I mentioned this yesterday, you need to hire contract lawyers that can get you out of this contract to come into the SEC. Wouldn't you much rather finish 3rd in the Big 12 every single year like you've been doing, rather than finish 11, 12, or 13 in the SEC? Seriously. You know, I know you want the money that comes along with being in the SEC, but y'all make enough money out there. I would strongly consider not coming to the SEC because y'all are the fans in particular are going to be absolutely miserable. Texas is, even though Texas fans are used to being bad, they're not used to losing 5, 6, 7 games a year, and that's likely going to happen the first few years they come to the SEC unless they drastically improve in a quick, fast, and in a hurry. That was absolutely humiliating. Laid an absolute egg against Arkansas. And again, this is a your season is over video where we laugh at losers, so I don't want to diminish what Arkansas did. But the reality is, it was Arkansas. So, Texas, time to put you back up on the shelf here. Let's see, where do you want to go? See, I hate this because I can't hardly even reach this shit up here. I need to be taller. Like, I'm like Skee-Lo. I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller. Well, I am a baller, please believe. Who's next on this doo-doo list? What about these perennial losers here? Tennessee. What an absolute joke and embarrassment. Can't beat Pitt. Pitt is a middle-of-the-road ACC team, and you know what that means? They're like a 7 or 8 win team. Most every team in the ACC is a 6, 7, 8 win team within the ACC. Every once in a while you get a team win 9 or 10 games because they play each other. I mean, outside of Clemson, what is the ACC? Virginia Tech is the second best team in the ACC. Just marinate on that. Marinate on that. Pitt beats you 31-24. You know, Tennessee, unfortunately for Tennessee, they're in moral victory mode. You know, if they don't get blown out, it's almost like a win for Tennessee, you know? So, you know, amazing win last week in week 1. Come out yesterday, get absolutely drugged by the Pitt Panthers. Joe Milton was a disgrace. Look, you know, the only people that are surprised that Joe Milton is terrible are Tennessee fans. Everyone else knew he was terrible because we watched him play last year at Michigan. Think about the terrible run of QBs Michigan has had. Then think about how bad you have to be the starting quarterback at Michigan and get benched after the terrible QB play they've had for years under Jim Harbaugh. That's how bad Milton was. Tennessee should have had at least 4 or 5 touchdowns in the first quarter alone. Wide open receivers running down the field, and Milton sails the ball 10, 15 yards over their head. It's unbelievable. Having a cannon for the arm does no good if you can't hit the ocean from the beach. And that's Joe Milton. He comes out of the game. Tennessee puts Hendon Ho in the game. First of all, this is probably, I don't know if this is the greatest name in football or the worst name in football, but Tennessee actually has a quarterback named, is it Hendon or Herndon? I think it's Hendon. Hendon Ho. Hendon Ho. Hi ho, hi ho. We lose to Pitt, we go. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Hi ho. Hendon Ho, Hendon Ho, Hendon Ho. I mean, it's just, I don't know. But anyway, he comes in. Is he a little bit better? I don't know. Not according to Josh Heupel, who's a quarterback guru, because Josh Heupel told you for the last 2-3 weeks, ever since he announced Milton as a starter, that Milton's your best QB. Where's Harrison Bailey going to transfer to? Inquiring minds want to know. Zero chance he's sticking around in Knoxville. What are you going to do when Harrison Bailey transfers somewhere and is putting up 350 a game through the air? I don't know. Oh, Lou, he can't run. Well, great. He can complete passes, though. Which is something neither one of your quarterbacks have figured out how to do yet. And also, my prediction seems to be coming true about Tennessee's defense. The worst defense in the SEC. Maybe Vandy's a little worse. We'll find out. I don't know. But Tennessee's defense is atrocious. You lost to Pitt. And the bigger problem for Tennessee, when you start looking down the road, to me, the goal for Tennessee this year should have been to make a bowl game. That should have been the goal, and there should be no goal higher than that. That should be the absolute ceiling in terms of setting goals and expectations. If you're a Tennessee fan, it should be, man, cross your fingers, do your thoughts, and hope you make a bowl game. Not likely now. I don't think, if you're not good enough to beat Pitt, it's hard to find 5 more wins on that schedule. It's easy to find losses, though. You want to add them up? Georgia, Bama, Florida, Ole Miss, Kentucky. I would say South Carolina, Mizzou, and Vandy. Can you win 2 of those? Can you win 2 of those? If you win 2 of those, you'll be sitting at 3 wins. You got another non-con game against a nobody. You might have 2 more non-con games against nobody. So that would be 1, 2, 4 or 5 wins. It's not going to be a good year. And, you know, the fans are already out with the fire Heupel. It's all over Twitter yesterday. If you don't believe me, go look. You know, they're mad because he started Milton. They're mad because he won't play Bailey. They're mad because he's running shotgun inside the 5-yard line on 4th and less than an inch. They're mad about everything. Heupel this, Heupel that. Heupel's got to go. Tennessee Vols 24/7 Sports put out an article Wednesday or Thursday of this past week saying that John Gruden's not happy in the NFL. And is there any way we can get John Gruden to the hill? We went through this with Tennessee fans 2-3 years ago. It's just a perpetual cycle at Tennessee of lose games, complain about coach, look for new coach. Lose games, complain about coach, look for new coach. Lose games, complain about coach, look for new coach. The cycle's going to continue there. Tennessee, an absolute abomination of not just a team. Again, I've been saying this for 2 or 3 years about Tennessee. The issue with Tennessee is not that they are going to have a bad team from year to year. Tennessee, at this point, a terrible football program. A terrible football program. And honestly, the fans are a lot to blame for that. They don't like to hear it. But Tennessee is the school where fan expectations and reality are the furthest apart. There's not another Power 5 program where fan expectations is further away from reality. There's not one. The fans think so much of themselves that when Tennessee tried to hire a decent coach, Greg Schiano, the fans got up in arms, rioted, protested, burned down Arby's or whatever they did in Knoxville and said, no, we don't want Greg Schiano. All Greg Schiano does is go up to Rutgers and immediately start winning games. Turned Rutgers around immediately. Immediately. They're 2-0 right now, by the way. Would have went over Syracuse yesterday, so suck on that for a while. The Tennessee fan is as much to blame for Tennessee's problems as the administration or any coach that they've hired. Also, gargle on this. Butch Jones is the best coach you've had in the last 13 years. Butch Jones, Lyle. Yeah, Lyle. Lyle's the best coach you've had in the last 13 years. Who else wants to get talked about? How could we forget? Hello, darkness, my old friend. The suck nut. Now, Oregon drove a struggle bus to a 7-point win over Fresno State last week. Ohio State had, in my mind, a pretty impressive win on the road against Minnesota where they covered the spread. They were 13.5-point favorite. They won by 14 on the road at a pretty good Minnesota team and a very well-coached Minnesota team. Then you get your first home game of the year, this year, at home against Oregon, a team that all they do is lose marquee non-con games. That's all Oregon does. Go back to the Chip Kelly days. All Oregon does is lose marquee non-con games. On top of that, they've got a brand new quarterback who didn't appear to know what he was doing last week. And for the Ohio State game, their two best players were out. Kayvon Thibodeau and Justin Flo. Neither one of these jokers played. God, if they would have played, Ohio State might not have got a first down. Ohio State's got some serious issues that go back to last year. I started to see some alarming signs with Ohio State going back to last year involving their defense. Now, their offense was not a problem last year because they had Justin Fields and a bunch of great receivers. Now, they still have all those receivers, but C.J. Stroud, clearly not a Justin Fields. And I'm not saying C.J. Stroud is terrible or is going to be terrible or can't end up being really, really good. But right now, you're not getting from C.J. Stroud what you were getting from Justin Fields. But the defense last year showed signs of being terrible. I mean, with almost every single game Ohio State played last year, with the exception of the playoff game against Clemson, which is weird, their defense was atrocious. Watching Clemson's defense is like watching shit run through a tin horn. There's just no resistance at all. And that's the case again now. And Oregon tried to lose this game by throwing the ball for no reason. Oregon was dominating this game with the ground game, with the run game. They get a lead in the fourth quarter, and they come out and start throwing the ball around. I'm like, what are you doing? They tried to lose, but Ohio State didn't have enough juice. And so you toted a giant L, sucknut, to an Oregon Duck. To an Oregon Duck. My God, this is horrible. This is horrible. And the bad news is if you're Ohio State, and in fact, I said this after the Minnesota game. If Ohio State doesn't tighten some things up, they're going to have 2 or 3 losses in the regular season. And now they've got 1. And they still have to run through the Big Ten schedule now. So we'll see. But if Ohio State doesn't get some things tightened up on both offense and defense, this won't be their first loss. This will not be their first loss. Now, do I think this is some kind of troubling sign about the future of Ohio State? No. Ohio State's been a great team for too many years in a row to have one, I don't even want to call it a bad season, but look, well, if Ohio State were to go, let's say 9-3 this year, okay, or even 10-2, and not even make the Big Ten title game or make the Big Ten title game and lose, to the Ohio State fan, that would be a bad season, and I get it. You're used to losing at most 1 regular season a year. But Ohio State could have a 9-3, 10-2 type season, I think, and it's not a sign that the wheels are falling off necessarily, right? They've been good enough, long enough to, I think, overcome what most people would view at Ohio State as a bad season, which would be maybe 9-3. So I don't think it's necessarily a sign of a bunch of bad things to come. But it's bad this week. Now, I'm going to put you back on this shelf here. Now, this is the top 10 shelf. I haven't updated my top 10 yet for this week. I do that on Monday, so that'll be tomorrow. So, Ohio State, enjoy your last day in 3rd place on the Uncle Lou top 10 shelf because there's going to be some serious rearranging going on that thing. In fact, you might not even be on that shelf tomorrow. You might not even be on that shelf tomorrow. You might be over here with everybody else that's not in the top 10. Have to wait till tomorrow to find out. You know who else is going to have to wait? Well, screw it. I'm not even going to wait till tomorrow to tell you this. This team will not be on my top 10 tomorrow. Iowa State. They looked absolutely terrible the first week, but escaped with a win. Here you go. I had them 9th this week. Now, to my credit, I had Iowa ranked ahead of them. And even though how was Iowa State favored in this game? Iowa State was a favorite in this game. That's hard to believe because if you go back to last week, Iowa destroyed Indiana. Iowa State drove the struggle bus against like Northern Iowa and almost lost. I wasn't surprised at all that Iowa beat them. So I already had Iowa ranked ahead of Iowa State. But you're falling out of the top 10, I can tell you that for sure, without a doubt, without any problems or questions. Matt Campbell, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told Brom 3 years ago at Purdue. You better get the hell out of Dodge, son. Because what's going to happen at Iowa State is when this current crop of seniors leaves, Iowa State's going to be back to winning 6 and 7 games a year, and no one's going to want you. That's just the fact. Never mind the reality that is the Big 12, a terrible conference which is hanging on to the Power 5 by a straw, by a string, barely. You better get out. The ship is sinking, and I don't know if UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU can save it, but I guess we're going to find out. But if I was Matt Campbell, I'm getting the hell out of Ames. But I'm not Matt Campbell, so we'll see what he does. But that's your list of... now, obviously, there's more teams than that lost. I feature 4 or 5 losers every Sunday, right? The ones that I think are the funniest or the most embarrassing or whatever. But trust me when I tell you, there's plenty of other teams that lost yesterday, and we're fixing to highlight those losers now. And yes, Uncle Lou has his copious notes. You don't have to worry about that. Let's see. Who else lost? Let's pull up. Where's the doo-doo list? Where's my doo-doo list? I know I wrote it. Ah, the doo-doo list. Yes. Hashtag doo-doo list. Can I get a hashtag doo-doo list in the comments? Thank you. We highlighted some losers there. Now, what about Mizzou? Mizzou lost. This was a great game. Who watched this game last night? Missouri and Kentucky. I didn't want to put Missouri on the Your Season Is Over list and clown them because, well, they were an underdog to begin with. They were a 5.5-point underdog. They ended up losing by a touchdown. But this was a competitive game, a back-and-forth game. Honestly, if these two teams played 10 times, for those of you that watched the game, each team probably win 5. I mean, these appeared to be two pretty evenly matched teams. But they did lose to Kentucky 35-28. Southern Cal. Now, I could have put Southern Cal on this list. It came down to Southern Cal and Iowa State, who I wanted to feature as far as the biggest 4 or 5 losers. I went with Iowa State because I had them in my top 10. I did not have Southern Cal in my top 10. But Southern Cal, what an absolute embarrassment. And this is the problem with Clay Helton and has been for a long, long time. There's not a team in the Pac-12 more talented than Southern Cal. Oregon's probably close. But Southern Cal out-recruits everyone else in the Pac-12 by a country mile. And then they come out and lay an absolute egg to one of the worst Stanford teams of my lifetime. Stanford is a joke. Look, Stanford's not, they won't even make a bowl game this year. That's how bad they are. Not only did you lose, you got blown out 42-28. Stanford's awful. And it doesn't give me any joy to say that because I've been a huge David Shaw fan for a long time, the head coach of Stanford there. But you guys, I mean, that was an absolute abomination. I mean, how do you put that product out on the field? The fans should have got a refund. Whatever Southern Cal games were at that game, the athletic department owes them a refund because you're stealing from them. You're charging them to watch a football team, but then you're putting a group of degenerates out on the field who doesn't even show up. I can't overestimate how embarrassing of a loss this is for Southern Cal to Stanford. Stanford is a terrible team. Terrible team. They got blown out by Kansas State, for Christ's sake. What do you think about Kansas State? Come on. Southern Cal, you got to do better. Southern Cal's going to reap what they sow. They should have thrown everything at Urban Meyer to try to get him, and they didn't. And now that ship has sailed. So those are some other losers for you there. Now we got some teams that won, but man, they got lucky. Boy, they got lucky. They won and they looked really, really bad. And on the top of that list, Texas A&M, another team that's ranked in the Uncle Lou top 10, that's probably going to be dropping this week. Lucky to escape with a win against a not very good Colorado team. Texas A&M didn't even score a touchdown against them until the 4th quarter. They were trailing the majority of this game, 7-3, and scored a late touchdown in the 4th quarter and won 10-7, but they looked absolutely horrible. No rhythm on offense, no continuity. Nothing was working. The type of game where nothing was coming easy for Texas A&M. They struggled to throw the ball. They struggled to run the ball. They struggled to stop the run. They struggled to stop the pass at times. Just nothing was good. Nothing was good. And if people are going to say, oh, well, when Clemson and Georgia played a low-scoring game, it was great, but now Texas A&M and Colorado is not Texas or Georgia. Come on. Come on. Colorado is not Texas or Georgia. This was a horrible performance by Texas A&M. Now, here's what I will say. You had some teams last year that had horrible games early in the season and lost those games. Then they got a whole lot better, and by the end of the year, the argument could be made they were one of the best 4 teams in America. I'm talking, of course, about Oklahoma. Oklahoma lost 2 of its first 3 games last year to teams that, had they played them 10 times, they would have beat them the other 9. But it doesn't matter. You don't play teams 10 times. You only play them once. So, Texas A&M, at the end of the year, if you're sitting there at 12-0 or 11-1, no one will remember that you screwed the pooch against Colorado and escaped with a 3-point win. No one will remember that. It won't get held against you because you won, okay? But you can't have another performance like that. I mean, you got Alabama coming up. If the Texas A&M team I saw yesterday is the one that shows up to play Alabama, Alabama will beat you like your Mercer. I mean, that was absolutely bad. But you escaped with a win, so that's better than a loss. Notre Dame, 2 weeks in a row, have played terrible teams, which is odd because anytime you talk to the Notre Dame man, what do they tell you? We don't need to be in a conference. We schedule 12 good teams a year. Yeah, if by good you mean Florida State, Toledo, and Miami of Ohio, then yeah, you schedule a bunch of good teams. But you beat what we now know is a horrible Florida State team by 3 friggin' points in overtime. And you could have and probably should have lost this game yesterday to Toledo. They were leading the whole way. They were up 16-14. You took a lead. They then went up 24-22 or whatever it was, and you somehow snuck away with a 32-29 win in this game. And that's probably the luckiest win of the day. Notre Dame beating Toledo was a luckier win than Texas A&M beating Colorado. Why? Well, one thing, Colorado is better than Toledo. What is Toledo? Holy Toledo. You almost lost. How about that? That's terrible. Rudy must be crying. This is absolutely insane. You know, I picked Notre Dame to go 8-4 in the offseason, and the Notre Dame fan told me I was the biggest idiot on planet Earth. We haven't lost more than 2 games in a season, and and we haven't lost a home game, and look, Cincinnati's coming. Cincinnati's coming, Rudy. Southern Cal's coming. Wisconsin's coming, and North Carolina's coming. Those are likely 4 losses for Notre Dame. Those are the 4 I predicted in the offseason. I'll admit North Carolina's had a bad game of its own, but they rebounded this past week and put up 1,000,000 points against a terrible team. And before you say, yo, a terrible team, you played Toledo, son. You played Toledo, son, and you were lucky to get away with a win. Lucky to get away with a win. Notre Dame is nowhere near the team they have been the last couple of years. Florida won 42-20 and looked like hot doo-doo doing it, which is no surprise or shock. I mean, this Dan Mullen's made a living out of this. Here he goes again. You know what? When are Florida fans going to wake up? Dan Mullen is supposed to be an offensive genius and a quarterback guru. He keeps picking the wrong quarterback every single year. Dan Mullen looked in the face of the Florida fan for 2 years straight and told him that Felipe Franks was better than Kyle Trask. That's right. Yeah, that's right. He started Felipe Franks over Kyle Trask in 2018 and in 2019. Felipe Franks was terrible. Terrible. Kyle Trask comes in when Franks gets injured halfway through 2019 and was lights out and amazing. And then we all know what he did last year, 2020, when he started the whole year. And he only started last year because Franks wasn't there. And so now you've got Emily Jones and Anthony Richardson. Everybody with a set of organized knows Anthony Richardson is a better quarterback than Emily Jones. What does Dan Mullen do? Continues to start Emily Jones week after week after week after week, despite evidence that Anthony Richardson is clearly better. The Florida fans know it. The media knows it. An idiot like me who just watches the game knows it. Yet he keeps starting Emily Jones over and over and over and over and over. Anthony Richardson comes in, leads the team on an amazing 75-yard touchdown drive or whatever, throwing dimes, running around all over the place. What do they do in the next series? They trot Emily Jones' happy ass back out there again. When are people going to stop with this Dan Mullen is a quarterback genius nonsense? He's put Dak Prescott in the NFL. That's it. That's it. Where does Dak Prescott rank in the hierarchy of NFL QBs? You know what? There's not a quarterback on Florida's team right now that's even better than Nick Fitzgerald. Who remembers him from Dan Mullen's last couple of years at Mississippi State? Anthony Richardson and Emily Jones aren't even as good as Nick friggin' Fitzgerald. And you're at Florida now, Dan. You should be able to get almost any quarterback you want based on your reputation and the fact that you're at Florida. And maybe you are getting any quarterback you want. And those quarterbacks that you want, name of Emily Jones and Anthony Richardson. But Jesus Christ, they're terrible. How bad is Alabama going to beat you next week? Might well not even watch that game. Terrible win over a terrible South Florida team, 42-20. Just a warm-up to get your doo-doo pushed in next week against the Gumps. Gumps coming into the swamp and are going to absolutely run it in dry on you. I, for one, can't wait to see it. Miami, what? Miami gets blown out by Alabama. You know, they want to commit suicide. They're running around, fire Manny Diaz, make Ed Reed the head coach, which, by the way, is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, probably in the history of the internet. These Miami fans that want Ed Reed as a head coach. The guy's never coached a day in his life anywhere at any level. All he does is hang around the Miami football program like a groupie and not shave his beard. That's all he does. And now they want him as head coach? Why? Because Manny Diaz is terrible? Do you really think every head coach you've gotten in the last 16 years is terrible? Do you really think that's what it is? Or do you think the Miami football program is dead? Probably option B. Does it really matter who the coach is down there? Probably not. How in the world you escaped this one? What was this? 25-23 to App State. You know, I gave Miami the benefit of the doubt, too, last week when they got boat raced by Alabama. I said, don't worry about it. Alabama's going to beat most every team they play by 30 or 40. I said, hell, look at the national title game last year. They beat Ohio State worse in the national title game than they beat Miami in week 1 this year. I said, don't worry about it, Miami, man. You know, however many wins you thought Miami was going to have in the offseason, the Alabama game shouldn't make you change that assessment. But this App State game should. Because App State ain't very good. App State has this reputation of being a giant killer. That was 15 years ago when they beat Michigan. 15 years ago. Since then, they ain't done much. I know they played Georgia a couple of years ago and lost by 50. So that tells you how far away you are from being relevant. Miami, man. Boy, you were lucky to get away with that thing with a win. Oklahoma State played in little brother Tulsa, in-state school Tulsa. Tulsa should have won this game because Tulsa was destroying Oklahoma State for the majority of this game. Now, the final score was 28-23. Oklahoma State did win 28-23, but they scored not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Okay? 23-7 they were losing. In the fourth quarter, they scored 3 touchdowns and win 28-23. So, again, congratulations for not losing. That's better than what Oklahoma did last year in the first couple of weeks when they had these terrible games and lost. But, man, Oklahoma State lost a lot of talent off of last year's team, and they still have Mike Gundy, which means probably not going to be too good this year, and yesterday was a good indication of that. Hard to buy into that. South Carolina. Friday. Come get you some bitch. South Carolina should have lost to East Carolina yesterday. Zeb Nolan might be the worst quarterback in the Power 5. He's an absolute dumpster fire. Please, please, please. I'm begging you. Start Doty next week in Athens. I dare. Let that be his first start, please. Please. We're going to find out how dumb Frank Beamer is. Yes, I know his name is Shane Beamer. But I called him Frank Beamer in a video the other day, and the South Carolina fans got extremely pissed off and butthurt. So I'm going to continue to call Shane Beamer Frank Beamer for the rest of the season. Please, Frank Beamer. Give Luke Doty his first start against Georgia on the road in Athens. Pretty please. Y'all should have lost to East Carolina. I'm tired of this. Is another thing. There's certain teams that have this reputation. Oh, better be careful when you play that team, like App State. App State hasn't beat a relevant team since 2007. East Carolina, same thing. Oh, East Carolina put a pretty good product on the field. Pretty good group 5. East Carolina hasn't even made a bowl game since 2015. They're terrible. And they were the better team yesterday, and South Carolina got lucky, and by some damn miracle, pulled out a win over East Carolina. But you should have lost that game for all intents and purposes. Hit a field goal, last-second field goal to beat East Carolina. Boy, this week is going to be something serious. South Carolina's my most hated team. Why? Well, it's geography. It's simple. I live in Augusta, which is on the border of South Carolina. So growing up, I knew a lot of South Carolina fans, so we'd go back and forth every year for the Georgia-South Carolina game. So, You know, I say this too all the time. If I knew Georgia had to go 1-11, I want that one win to be against South Carolina. And the South Carolina, oh, you know what happened last time? We come down to Athens. We beat Georgia last time. Yes, you did beat Georgia in 2019. One of the biggest upsets in college football history, okay? But thinking that means you're going to do it again is like going out, playing the lottery, winning $1 billion, and then going, oh, well, I should play the lottery again tomorrow. I'll win $1 billion again. No, you won the lottery. Enjoy it. You should have saved some of that money because you're not getting any more this week because Georgia's going to absolutely destroy you. Destroy you. Plus, you screwed around with the hedges after you won. You're out there digging hedges up, and I don't know what the hell y'all was doing. Georgia's going to beat you worse than they beat UAB. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. See you next week, Frank Beamer. Anyway, moving right along, those are the teams that won but looked terrible doing it. Now, there were some teams that won and looked good. Georgia, which is a miracle because they have no offense, and they were going 1-12. I guess now they're going 2-10, but they beat the bejesus out of UAB. And look, a lot of these teams I'm going to mention here played bad teams, but here's the thing. So did Miami. So did Oklahoma State. So did South Carolina. So did Texas A&M. Okay? When you play a bad team, the best you can do is dominate them and blow them out. That's what Georgia did to UAB. That's what Alabama did to Mercer. That's what Clemson did to South Carolina State. That's what Oklahoma did to whatever sister to blind school they played. On and on. You know, lots of blowouts. The Auburn blew somebody out. Alabama State or whatever the hell it was. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. So you can tell me all you want. Oh, UAB, Mercer, Alabama State. Yeah. And you beat them by 40, 50, 60 points, whatever. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. Oregon had a good win over Ohio State. A lot of people, myself included, were doubting Oregon. That was a good win. Cincinnati, 42-7. Cincinnati was losing 7-0. Came back and won 42-7. I think the game was tied at halftime, 7-7. Cincinnati. Cincinnati's to the point now where they're starting to sleepwalk through some of these lesser games, you know, and that's what was happening in the first half of this one. They turned it on in the second half, won 42-7. They're a legit team. And honestly, they're a legit playoff contender. They got to beat Notre Dame and Indiana. They got 2 Power 5 games, Notre Dame and Indiana. They win both of those, go 12-0, win the conference title at 13-0. We'll see what's going on with the Big 12 and the Pac-12, but it's possible Cincinnati could get in. Iowa, good win over Iowa State. Talked about that already. Penn State, 44-13. They remain unbeaten. Arkansas, this is a good win for Arkansas. Look, Arkansas is not a great team, and they beat Texas. Texas is a blue blood. You know what a blue blood means? It means you were good a long time ago. That's what it means. You know who else is a blue blood? Alabama. You don't ever hear Alabama fans walking around going, we're blue bloods. We're blue bloods. Alabama's a blue blood. The only people who talk about being blue bloods are teams who used to be good but are doo-doo today. That's you, Texas fans. Be sure and let me know in the comment section that Texas is a blue blood, though. Please, I'm begging you. That would be great. Who else? Mississippi State. I thought NC State would win this game. Mississippi State's now 2-0. Beats NC State 24-10. Rutgers 2-0. Beat Syracuse. Not an impressive win, but again, Tennessee fan. Look at Greg Schiano. Look what he's doing at Rutgers. That could have been you, but it's not. Instead, you're losing to Pitt. What a shame. Michigan beat Washington. Was it 31-10? Not a surprise. Washington lost to Montana the week before, but still, people love to doubt Michigan. So Michigan won, covered the spread. Good win for Michigan. I mean, look, it is what it is. Michigan's 2-0. Pretty good win, right? Yeah. Now, who's the best teams in no particular order? Well, this is easy. In no particular order, it's Alabama and Georgia, and then there's a gap. And then you have teams like Clemson, Oklahoma, Cincinnati. I think that's it in that next tier. And then you've got another tier of teams. It's got teams like Iowa, Florida, Texas A&M, whoever you want to put in that third tier. But right now, Georgia and Alabama are clearly the best 2 teams in college football, period. That can't be argued or debated, as much as you want to cry about it in my comment section. You know, just because something hurts your feelings don't mean it ain't true. Yeah, so that's that. Heisman. Bryce Young, Spencer Rattler. Now, we're very early in the season. So, you know, by the time October is finished, there'll be a few more names, maybe. Hell, maybe even next week somebody will do something. We'll go, oh, watch out for this guy for the Heisman. But right now, it's a 2-man race between Bryce Young and Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler had 5 touchdowns yesterday. Bryce Young only had 3, but it was a blowout. And, you know, they took him out and play him a lot. But, you know, my money right now, I mean, look, if you had to put $1 right now on somebody to win the Heisman, you'd put that dollar on either Bryce Young or Spencer Rattler, wouldn't you? That's what I mean. I think they're the two clear front runners right now. Maybe after we have a few more weeks of football to look at, we can sort of fill in the list, you know, make a top 5 or something. But it's hard to even find who would be on that list right now in my mind. I mean, I think it's Spencer Rattler or Bryce Young, and then a bunch of people who really don't have a chance. Just my opinion. Anyway, sorry for everyone's loss this week, but you know how it is. How many games do you have in an average weekend? 60? 60 games, whatever, 120 teams about, because you got some bye weeks. There's 130-something teams, but every team's, bye weeks here and there. You got about 60 games per weekend. It's 120 teams. Out of those 120, 60 have to lose. 60 have to lose. And if you were featured in today's video, you were one of those 60. Have a good morning. Okay, let's clean up these damn notes. Copious notes. I don't know what I would do without my copious notes. Oh, let me go ahead and do this too. Let's go ahead. Let's get this one. Should we get... Oh, we used a black one this week. We used a black one. We'll put that right there. I think that'll be good. Go ahead and put that there, I guess. I think that... Well, how about there? Yeah, we'll do that. I'll come over here. Where's this? Oh, yeah, okay, grab that. Oh, I gotta hurry up and get this video uploaded too. Where's... Oh my God. Oh boy, this is gonna be a great week. I can't wait. I cannot wait. That Friday Hype and Hate video is gonna be something too. Look at this. A damn shame cock. Frank Beamer.